The Everything Store, Jeff Bezos and the Rise of Amazon. This book by Brad Stone chronicles the journey of Amazon and, of course, the rise of Jeff Bezos in this world. Jeff Bezos was recently named the top CEO, the top technology CEO in the US, the most respected technology CEO in the US. There's a lot to learn from this guy. There's a lot to learn from how Amazon has evolved as uh, humble roots in 1994, selling books, to going IPO in 1997, and then going to $100 billion market cap in 2011, and so on and so forth. Amazon has been rising and rising and rising and becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. Started selling books, then started selling music, and then electronics, and now it is everything. They sell everything. So there's a lot to learn from Jeff Bezos, how he made it all happen. Not just because he's a billionaire, but because he's grown this company so much, and with so much, he takes so much flack from all the investors and the stock market because he doesn't really care so much about the short term stock price of the company. And we're going to talk about the 5 important lessons to learn, to take away from Jeff Bezos. The first of which is having a long term vision. As entrepreneurs or just as human beings, we have this tendency to think short term, to think only for the next quarter or for today or for tomorrow or for a week or two or a month or even a year. But when Jeff Bezos started the company, he said, we're doing this for decades. We're building this company for decades. We're not building this company to make a quick buck and get out of the whole internet flash in the pan thing. And he has always maintained that. And one of the interesting things, if you've followed Amazon, you've seen this happen again and again. You've seen the discussion around the idea that Amazon doesn't necessarily generate a lot of profit, and its stock price is questionably low sometimes, or doesn't, or the fact that the CEO himself doesn't really care so much about the stock price. And there are a lot of questions about it. So Jeff Bezos has a funny way of explaining it, which he kind of learned from Warren Buffett. He says that, as Warren Buffett says, you can either host a rock concert or a ballet. Just don't advertise a ballet as a rock concert or a rock concert as a ballet. What he means by that is that if you are an investor, you can either be a long-term investor or you can be a trader. As Amazon as a company is a company designed for someone who wants to be a long-term investor, not designed for someone who wants to be a short-term trader. So they do not advertise the company as something that's supposed to make money in the short term. That's absolutely not what they're after. The company is here for the long haul, for decades and decades. And that's what Jeff Bezos is after, and that's what he really wants you to be after. So if that's not what you as an investor are after, get out of Amazon. He doesn't care. That's what he's trying to say. Have a long-term vision. If you have your business, when you're thinking about what you're doing with your business, don't think short-term. Don't think a quarter or 6 months. Think way more long-term. What would make this business successful in the long term? How can you make this business really grow and succeed in the long term, rather than think about just making a quick buck here, making a quick buck there. Now, just to go back on the whole idea of the stock price, the discussion about how he does not care about the investors who are just in it to make a quick buck. And a lot of times the investors say, hey, we need the stock price to go up. We need the stock price to go a little higher. And what Jeff Bezos is a very rational person and very rationally thinks, says, what is something that we can control? What is that controllable input that we can give in order to bump up our stock price, in order to increase our stock price? And what he's saying, what he found out is that if you keep on working it backwards, okay, well, if you want to increase the stock price, you increase the revenue, decrease the cost. Okay, well, let's talk about decreasing the cost. What is controllable in decreasing the cost? Let's figure out, maybe we need to lower the technology prices, but that's not a good idea. Maybe we need to lower the infrastructure costs again. So you keep on working it backwards to the point where you have a controllable input. So an idea that I talk about quite a lot in a lot of the books talk about is the lead factor versus the lead indicators versus lag indicators. The idea that when something is controllable as an input, we call it a lead factor, while the lag factor is the output. So the stock price is not necessarily a lead indicator, it's a lagging indicator. And what Jeff Bezos is saying is, let me as a CEO focus just on lead indicators, just on the things that I can directly control. I don't want to be influencing stock price every few months or every few weeks or something like that. He says that very frankly, that he doesn't even monitor the stock price on a day-to-day basis. He does not care. And another thing he learned from Benjamin Graham, he says, the stock market in the short term is a voting machine, but in the long term is a weighing machine. And what Jeff Bezos is saying is, as I'm at Amazon, we are in for the long term. We are going to treat this, we want the stock market to treat us, or the stock market to weigh us, not vote on us. It's a really key idea, just to make sure that you think long term, don't think short term about your business. The second big idea, the second key takeaway from Jeff Bezos' journey is that he is okay with trying and failing. And he says that time and again, that he's a very rational person, again, something that comes up again and again. He says any experiment has a chance of failure. That's why we call it an experiment. And in business, we ought to conduct experiments. We ought to try things, because some things will fail. If we only try to do things that we think are going to be successful, we're not conducting experiments. And if we don't conduct experiments, we'll never find out how far we could go. And the big example of this was the Fire Phone, which did not succeed, which failed kind of in the market, and has been kind of dark or black spot in the Amazon history. And a lot of investors ask him, or a lot of reporters will ask him as to why they're investing in stuff like this, and he always says, we've got to invest in experiments. We've got to keep on experimenting. We as a company have to allow ourselves to fail. And he also says that if he keeps too tight a fist on the company and stops people from experimenting and scares people who fail, scares his employees or his chief executives or his VPs or whoever they are, if he dissuades them from failing, then he's just doing the company a big disservice. So fail often, fail rapidly, figure it out. Failure is a part of growing your business. If you're not failing, you're not growing, you're not getting to the next level. The third big idea is that Jeff Bezos is all about learning and reading. He is a big-time reader, big-time learner. He's always trying to figure things out. He has a copy, apparently one of his favorite books is Sam Walton's Biography, Made in America, which we have summarized in the past. And what he said, he has this copy tattered up and highlighted and marked up because he really enjoys learning from one of the greatest retailers who has ever lived. And he says that some of the things he took away from Sam Walton were frugality and a bias for action. And that's very evident in the Amazon culture. They have a very tremendous, very strong bias for action. And they are a very, very, very frugal company in the way they operate their business. Another book that he found he learned a lot from was The Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen, in which Clayton Christensen talks about the idea that how as a big company, you are always being threatened by smaller companies who are going to take in, who are going to start from the smaller end, but then they're going to disrupt you. And how do you, as a big company, not get disrupted? That was the big question answered in Innovator's Dilemma. And what he learned from Innovator's Dilemma, what Bezos learned from Innovator's Dilemma was that in order for a big company to ensure that they do not stumble when competing with these small competitors, is to set up a small independent or small company inside of the company that actually competes, that tries to break the current business model. So that's what Jeff Bezos did when his book business was thriving, this hard book business was thriving, he appointed the chief of the book business to now go and run the ebook business, go figure out the Kindle and go figure out the e-reader and the ebook business. And when the chief said, okay, well, I can run both. I can run the physical bookstore and I can run the electronic books business. And Jeff Bezos said, no, you have to be separate. Your job is to kill our physical book business. That is how clear he is in his thinking. Once he understands, he learns from these books, he executes what he learns from these books. Really, really, really sharp guy, always looking to learn, always looking to grow, always looking to read more from these books. He has his own executive book club that meets every Saturday and they talk about the books, all these business books. Another book he loves is Jim Collins' Good to Great, where he figured out the idea of the flywheel, and he continues to say today that all we're doing is creating momentum, and we don't necessarily have one big advantage, we just have a lot of small advantages that we have put together, and we continue to gain momentum. And he also does not like the idea of putting together a lot of misguided acquisitions, because that is what Jim Collins in his book Good to Great totally abhorred. He said, do not do it. And Jeff Bezos agrees with that, learns from the book, and applies what he learns from these books. And he has been a lifelong learner. He has been a lifelong reader ever since he was a young kid. The fourth big idea that you want to take away from this book is that sometimes as starting entrepreneurs, as owners of a startup or founder, you get a little concerned because you have your dream, you think your dream is small. You don't think you want to dream as big as Amazon, but you are just starting off in a garage, just one person trying to make it happen. But what we see in this journey of Amazon is that is how every journey starts. It all unfolds as you go. Amazon started as a bookseller. They started by selling one book, then two, then 4, 10, 20, 40, 80, 100, 20, 200. So they started by selling one book. Then they moved from books to music, to electronics, to toys, to now they sell everything. But it did not just happen in a moment, in a flash. So don't get discouraged when you are fighting it out in the trenches and you feel like your dreams are too small compared to the great enterprises that have been built over time. Realize that all these great enterprises, all these great businesses started small. They started where they are and they kept on evolving, kept on iterating, kept on iterating. An example in the case of Amazon is their Amazon Web Services, also called S3. And it did not just start off as someone's brainchild, as in like, okay, let's just offer our servers to the external world for work. No, what happened was that while Amazon was going through its growing pains, they found out was that Jeff Bezos found out was that a lot of the engineers were always complaining about the lack of computing resources that they had, and they had to go and get time on the server farms in order to get computational resources. And Jeff said, well, we need to increase the capacity. And what they found out was as they increased capacity, they had excess capacity. So then they started farming it out to outside people, and now everyone uses Amazon Web Services. We do, and everyone else's does too. What Jeff Bezos said was like allowing the Amazon Web Services to operate the way they do is like having a grid of electricity. Having that computational power available to everyone is like having a grid of electricity compared to 100 years ago or whenever electricity was just getting started. If you wanted electricity, you needed your own power plant. Everyone who needed electricity needed their own power plant. But once the power grid came into being, you did not need your own power plant. You could just take electricity off the grid and pay whatever you used. Same thing is what they have done with S3. You can just take the computing that you need from S3 and pay for whatever you've used. Similarly, the idea of the ebooks and the ebook reader evolved because Jeff Bezos saw what Apple was able to do with iPod and being able to sell music directly through the iTunes store. And he said, that's what we need to do in the ebook store or in the book realm, otherwise Apple will eat our lunch. So all of these little things are evolving. These are all results of experiments. These are not massive brainchild ideas that just suddenly happen one day. That's not how it works. These are small things evolving, and that's the key to Amazon success: evolution, evolution, evolution. So don't try to dream up the greatest idea right away. Just let it unfold, keep on executing, keep on working. The fifth big idea that I learned, or you want to learn from Jeff Bezos, is that he is obsessed with customer satisfaction. That is the key. He is obsessed with customer satisfaction. And one of the things he likes to say is that you can either be a missionary or a mercenary. Now, what that means is that as a missionary, you're out to help, you're trying to service them, you're serving people. While as a mercenary, you're out to take, you're out to kill, you're out to make a buck. And that's how a lot of the businesses operate in today's environment. They want to make the buck. They want to make their money and get out of there. They want the quick sale. They want to make a quick buck. While what Jeff Bezos is saying, I want to make the customer experience so good that they keep coming back to us. I want to serve them very well. And what Jeff Bezos says is that it's a paradox. It's a very interesting paradox. In the end, as the missionaries who end up making a whole lot more money than the mercenaries. And this idea really ties back to the whole idea that we started with, which is having a long-term vision. Only when you have a long-term vision can you can give and you can serve. When you have a short-term vision, you want to be a mercenary. You want to take. You want to take as much as you can because you don't know when the next thing will come. So having that customer obsession and being a missionary rather than a mercenary really helps Amazon dial in and continue to get to the next level. So there we have it, Amazon's great journey and the story told by Brad Stone. A lot of great lessons to be learned from Jeff Bezos.